Some wounds strike far deeper than any physical injury, especially when they're dealt by the person you once loved and trusted more than anyone else. Up until that devastating evening, I was convinced my life was perfect, that I was the luckiest woman alive. Right until the moment my husband's brutal kick not only broke the bone in my leg, but shattered my faith and my heart along with it. In that darkest hour when despair nearly consumed me, it was in the clear, frightened gaze of my little 4-year-old daughter that I caught the faintest glimmer of hope. The pounding rain against the window echoed the same violent rhythm as the man standing over me. Pain surged upward from my injured calf until it filled my entire body, stealing even the ability to cry out. All I could do was curl on the cold tile floor, biting my lips hard enough to taste blood. My sight began to blur, yet Damon's polished shoes, planted right before me, remained sharply visible. He bent down, yanked my hair, and my head snapped backward helplessly. That once beloved face, now twisted with fury, was crimson and distorted beyond recognition. His voice came out like venom. "How dare you talk back, you worthless leech?" He bellowed that I'd refuse to give him the $50,000 he demanded for his business, as if I would be pleased to see him destitute. Every accusation felt like a knife driven through my chest. Leech, that's what I was to him now. I had left my job at his insistence to raise our daughter Layla and care for the home. I'd handed over every dollar I owned, even the proceeds from selling the condo my parents had left me, to fund his endless schemes. And still, in his eyes, I was nothing but a burden. Fighting to hold back tears, I whispered barely audibly, "I swear, Damon, I don't have any more money. I gave you everything I had last month." "Liar!" he roared, jerking my hair tighter. "Didn't your adoptive parents leave you a house? You sold it and hid the money, didn't you? Tell me the truth." That house had been my adoptive parents' final gift, but I'd sold it 3 years earlier to pay for the heart surgery Damon claimed he needed. He had forgotten. I hadn't the strength to remind him. Pain burned so fiercely in my leg that it consumed my thoughts. Something was terribly wrong. I could feel it. My leg throbbed, yet beyond that there was numbness, a hollow absence of sensation. Tears and sweat mingled as I begged through trembling lips, "Please stop. My leg hurts so much." Damon only laughed, the sound chillingly detached. He released my hair, letting my head strike the floor. "Good. Maybe the pain will teach you to keep your mouth shut." Then he strode to the sofa, picked up his phone, and, as if flicking a switch, softened his voice to Honey. "Yes, sweetheart, I got your call. Just finishing some business. I'll be there soon. Can't wait to see you and our son." Our son. The words froze my heart. I hadn't misheard. Who was he talking to? What son? Confusion thundered louder than the pain. A faint sound came from the cracked door of Layla's room. My little girl. She had seen everything. Standing behind the door, eyes wide and wet, her tiny hands covered her mouth to stifle sobs. The sight of her splintered me completely. Damon noticed too. He turned sharply, glaring. "Stop crying and go to your room. Close the door." Layla trembled but didn't move. She looked at me instead, fearful yet alert, far wiser than her age, and in that moment of agony, I found a flicker of courage. Meeting her gaze, I shook my head slightly, then glanced toward the phone on the table beside the sofa. My eyes pleaded with her. I didn't know if she could understand, but Layla nodded faintly. When Damon turned away to light a cigarette, she slipped soundlessly from her room, barefoot and delicate as a shadow. My heart pounded as if it might burst. "Please don't turn around," I begged silently. Layla reached the table, feigned a stumble, cried ouch, and hit the phone, sending it tumbling onto the rug. "Clumsy kid," Damon barked, still not looking back. That was her chance. She grabbed the phone, clutched it to her chest, and ducked beneath the table. Her tiny hands shook as she unlocked the screen. The code was her own birthday. She scrolled the contacts and tapped beloved Grandpa. Holding the phone to her ear, she struggled for words, her small voice trembling until it finally broke free. "Grandpa, Grandpa, Mommy's going to die." The silence that followed was unbearable. 1 second, 2, 3, before a deep, calm voice answered. "Layla, sweetheart, you did so well. Can you tell Grandpa where you are?" That steady tone cut through my panic like light through fog. I moved closer, my own voice quivering. "Grandpa, it's Sophia. We're at—" I forced out the address of the small Bronx apartment Damon had turned into our prison. "Got it," he replied firmly. "Lock yourselves in a room and don't open the door for anyone, and not even him. Grandpa's coming." The line went dead. Layla's tearful eyes met mine, glimmering now with fragile hope. I embraced her, trembling but resolute. The fear was still there, but something stronger had replaced it, certainty that this nightmare was ending. We hid in the bathroom. I wiped both our faces clean, forcing myself to stay composed for her sake. I didn't know how Grandpa would reach us, only that he would. He always had. Minutes crawled by. Outside, the storm faded, replaced by the rhythmic drip of water from the roof. Then, engines. Not motorcycles, but the heavy growl of expensive cars. Doors slammed. Footsteps advanced. It had to be him. Through the peephole, I saw 4 men in black suits, tall, expressionless, flanking an older man in a gray suit, straight-backed and commanding, leaning on a cane of dark wood with a silver head. His white hair glistened under the hall light. His eyes were sharp and absolute. "Where's Sophia's apartment?" he asked the stunned landlady. She pointed at our door, trembling. "Sophia, it's Grandpa. Open up." The moment I heard his voice, I flung the door wide and collapsed into his arms. "Grandpa!" He held me tightly. "It's over now, child. No one will ever harm you again." Outside, a motorcycle screeched to a halt. Damon had returned, his face blanching at the sight of luxury sedans and men in suits. "What's going on here? Who are you people?" he shouted, then turned on me. "Sophia, who's this old man?" Grandpa's calm stare froze him in place. "So you're Damon," he said evenly, "the one who hurt my granddaughter." "So what? You can't just barge into my home," Damon spat back. "Who I am doesn't matter," Grandpa replied, voice deep as thunder. "What matters is what you did." His gaze fell to my swollen leg, and one of the men stepped forward. "Damon Garrett, you're under arrest for domestic violence. Come with us." "What? That's absurd," Damon protested, panic rising. "The proof is right here," Grandpa said quietly. The bruises on her body, and the call from my great-granddaughter. 2 men seized Damon as he thrashed helplessly. "Sophia, say something. Do you really want me in jail?" I looked at him with nothing but cold contempt. Grandpa gestured to another guard, who handed the landlady a thick envelope. "This will cover his debts and your silence. You've seen nothing. Understood?" She nodded frantically. Within moments, everything was settled. Grandpa turned to me, his tone softening again. "Come, little one. Let's go home." He carried Layla in his arms, and she nestled against his chest. Finally safe, one guard helped me to the car, where a woman in a white coat waited. "Our family doctor," Grandpa explained. As the car rolled away, leaving the nightmare behind, the lights of New York shimmered outside the window. But inside me, a different storm was breaking, one that would lead eventually to truth, family, and the safety I had long stopped believing in. The doctor treated my injuries. Thankfully, my leg wasn't broken. Layla slept soundly in Grandpa's arms, exhaustion etched across her small face. Watching her, gratitude and pain mingled in my heart. Without her bravery, we might not have survived. I studied Grandpa, Alexander Monroe, the man who had once been only a distant figure in my childhood. Memories surfaced. My adoptive parents, Franklin and Martha Patterson, modest but loving civil servants, and their dear friend, Mr. Alexander, the powerful CEO who had paid for my schooling and treated me as the granddaughter he never had. When my parents died in a car accident during my senior year, it was he who handled everything, comforting me through the loss. "You're not alone," he'd said. "From now on, I'm your family." He found me work in one of his company's branches, and slowly, I began to heal until Damon entered my life. Charming, ambitious, and persuasive, Damon had seemed like salvation. I ignored Grandpa's quiet warning that his eyes lacked honesty. A year later, we married. Grandpa gave us a condo and generous funds as a wedding gift, though Damon soon sold them off under the pretext of independence. When Layla was born, he insisted I quit my job. His temper worsened as his business failed, and before long, anger turned into blows. I kept silent, hiding the bruises even from Grandpa, believing I could endure for my daughter's sake. That illusion ended tonight. By the time the car stopped before the vast Hampton estate, I was numb. Grandpa led us to a tranquil room, once my adoptive mother's. "From now on, this is your home," he said. For the first time in years, I slept without fear. When morning sunlight streamed across the room, I rose, sore but determined. In the mirror, I saw a weary woman with bruises on her face, yet behind her eyes burned a new fire. I showered, dressed, and went downstairs. Breakfast waited. Grandpa looked up from his newspaper with a gentle smile. Beside him sat a composed man in glasses and a tailored suit. "Sophia, this is Mr. Davis, my lawyer and closest friend," Grandpa said. Mr. Davis greeted me warmly, expressing sympathy but focusing on what came next. Over breakfast, they spoke softly about the future, Layla's schooling, travel, and recovery, until, at last, we moved to the study. Surrounded by shelves of books, Grandpa's tone grew firm. "This isn't the time to grieve. It's time to act." Mr. Davis opened his briefcase. "Following the president's orders," he said, "we've begun investigating Damon Garrett's affairs. Our first step is to freeze all joint assets before he can hide them." "Joint assets?" I murmured. "There can't be anything left. I gave him everything." Mr. Davis smiled faintly. "Not necessarily. You're still legally his wife, which gives us leverage. We'll review everything again, thoroughly." We also had to follow the trail of every dollar I'd handed over to him to see its final destination. Grandpa inclined his head. "Exactly. That scoundrel couldn't have simply failed in a business. There has to be more to it. Davis, investigate all his financial movements over the last 3 years. Leave no stone unturned." "Of course, President," Mr. Davis responded. "We have someone watching him since last night. He's out on bail. And the strange thing is that he doesn't seem worried or nervous at all. In fact, just this morning, one of our men saw him at an upscale cafe with a woman." My pulse lurched at that. "Who is that woman?" My voice trembled slightly. "We are verifying her identity, but one thing is certain. Their relationship didn't seem like simple acquaintances." Mr. Davis produced a zoomed, distant photo. Damon seated close to a woman, his hand over hers. "And here's the important part," Mr. Davis went on. "Just after you left the apartment, he returned there. Our man overheard him talking on the phone, saying in a very irritated voice, 'The plan has gone awry.' That stupid woman isn't as simple as I thought. We'll have to find another way. The plan, that stupid woman." He was unmistakably speaking about me, about us, and about Grandpa. So last night wasn't a random explosion of anger from Damon at all. It belonged to a scheme I hadn't even suspected existed. With each minute, the situation grew more tangled and frightening. "One more thing, Ms. Hemphill," Mr. Davis added. "Legally, we have more than enough evidence to charge him with domestic violence, but to secure custody of little Layla and ensure he pays a greater price, we need more evidence proving he is an unfit father and has committed other illegal acts." Grandpa studied me. Resolute. "Sophia, I know this is going to be very hard for you, but you have to be strong. This is your fight. Do you want a divorce? Get a settlement and let it go? Or do you want to go all the way, expose the true face of that man, and get justice for the years you suffered?" I glanced between Grandpa and Mr. Davis, feeling rage and resolve flare hotter. I had already lost too much. I couldn't risk losing my daughter, and I couldn't bear the thought of him walking free after all he'd done. "I want to go all the way." My voice had steadied. It sounded oddly unshakable. "I want him to pay for everything." Grandpa gave a pleased nod. "Well said, my granddaughter. Then let's begin with our plan." I remained in the study with them the entire day as they laid out a meticulous, sequential strategy. I, once merely enduring, now became a participant, a central lever in the legal and psychological campaign ahead. The road would be brutal, but I was done with fear. I had, at my back, not isolation, but a vast empire ready to shield and assist me. In the days that followed, I set aside my anguish and locked onto the blueprint Grandpa and Mr. Davis had drawn. The Hamptons mansion turned into our operations hub. Mr. Davis arrived daily to brief us and dissect fresh intel. I, a former stay-at-home mother, began absorbing unfamiliar legal and financial vocabulary. I devoured the files he supplied, determined to grasp every dimension of the battle before me. Though Grandpa didn't run the investigation personally, he steered the strategy and leveraged an expansive network to bolster us. His steadiness and clarity kept me grounded. As our opening and most vital move, Mr. Davis filed on my behalf an emergency court order freezing all bank accounts in our names. At the same time, he petitioned the appropriate authorities to block any purchase, sale, or transfer involving our assets. The goal was to cut off his escape route and stop any last-minute siphoning. Predictably, this turned him into a trapped animal. He bombarded me with calls and messages, at first cloying pleas. "Sophia, why are you doing this? Why did you freeze the accounts? I urgently need the money for a project. If you do this, you are killing me." When I refused to answer, he pivoted to menace. "All right, so you think you're so brave now that you have that old man protecting you. Listen closely. Don't push me to the limit. If you do, neither you nor your daughter will get out unscathed." Instead of frightening me, those threats stoked my fury. I forwarded everything to Mr. Davis. They became powerful proof of his cruelty and pettiness. Meanwhile, his team moved with startling speed. Within 3 days, they brought the first findings. Mr. Davis fanned out documents across Grandpa's broad mahogany desk. "President Ms. Hemphill, we have the first lead," he said, indicating a thick bank statement. "This is the history of the transfers you, Ms. Hemphill, made to Damon Garrett's account over the last 3 years. The total exceeds $500,000. It's not a small amount." Seeing those numbers made my chest tighten. $500,000, everything I'd saved, plus the proceeds from my adoptive parents' house. I had handed it over without reservation, and what I got back was the cruelest betrayal. And here comes the important part. Mr. Davis flipped to another sheet. All this money, after entering Mr. Garrett's account, was not invested in any construction project, as he claimed. Instead, it was divided and moved through several accounts in a complex scheme, and finally, it all flowed into a single account. He marked a name. "This account belongs to a legal entity called Golden Future Investments and Development, LLC. Golden Future? I knitted my brow. I had never heard the name. "That's normal," Mr. Davis explained. "This company was formed about 3 years ago, coinciding with the time Mr. Garrett started talking about starting a business. And the legal representative of this company is not him." He passed over another paper. It was a compact corporate filing. My eyes dropped to the administrator entry, and an unknown name surfaced. Eliza Sterling. "Who is Eliza Sterling?" Grandpa asked, his voice low and commanding. "She's the woman Damon Garrett met with at the cafe the other day, Mr. Howe." Davis produced a crisper photo. A poised, attractive woman in her 20s, smiling warmly beside Damon. The picture snapped all the pieces into place. There was never a business venture. Golden Future served as a facade to funnel my money. With my funds, he had established a company tied to his mistress, crafting a golden future for the two of them, erected on my sacrifice and tears. A cold blaze rose in me. He had betrayed me not only in love, but financially robbed me. "And where is this company based?" I asked. Steady. "The registered office is in a prime office building on 5th Avenue, but our people went there and they only have a virtual office rented with almost no activity. However, we have located the apartment where this Eliza Sterling lives. It's a luxurious duplex in an upscale apartment complex in the Upper East Side district," Mr. Davis said. Grandpa, silent until then, finally spoke. A keen light flashed in his gaze. "Davis, investigate that woman, Eliza Sterling. Further. Her past, her relationships, everything. I want to know it all. And keep monitoring this Damon's movements. I fear this is not just a case of adultery and fraud." "Yes, President." Grandpa's warning chilled me. He was right. How could someone as young as Eliza have orchestrated such a sophisticated scheme with Damon? There had to be another player in the shadows. And was Damon, violent and avaricious, truly capable of designing all of this alone? The puzzle pieces were aligning towards something far bigger and more dangerous than I'd imagined. I sensed the conflict would be far more intricate and perilous than I'd thought. The days that followed stretched unbearably. Impatience burned in me with each sunrise. I worried for myself, but above all, for Layla. She was too little to grasp the tempest tearing our family apart. She only wanted to know why she couldn't see her father, why her mother looked constantly sorrowful. I had to embrace her and lie that Daddy had gone on a very long business trip. Every time I said it, guilt cut me through. While I wrestled with my emotions, Mr. Davis's team and the private investigators Grandpa hired worked relentlessly. Like tireless bees, they gathered drops of truth from a hive of deceit. One afternoon, Mr. Davis phoned. His tone was graver than usual. "Ms. Hemphill, could you come to my office right now? We have some new discoveries, and I think it would be better if you saw them yourself." A wave of dread washed over me. I left Layla with a staff member and hurried to his downtown office. It sat on the skyscraper's top floor with a sweeping view of Manhattan, though the city looked drained of color to me. Mr. Davis waited in the conference room. On the table lay multiple folders and a laptop. "Please have a seat," he said gently. "What you are about to see might be quite shocking. You need to prepare yourself." I clasped my hands tightly. "Tell me. I can handle whatever it is." Mr. Davis exhaled and angled the screen toward me. "We have investigated Eliza Sterling further. She's not a simple woman. Apparently, she is the director of a startup. But in reality, she has a quite complex past. And most importantly, she and Damon Garrett did not meet recently." He hit play. A sequence of photographs appeared. The first showed Damon and Eliza walking hand in hand along a Miami beach. The timestamp was roughly 3 years earlier, just months after I'd sold my adoptive parents' house to fund Damon's supposed heart operation. So the illness had been a ruse to extract my last substantial funds. That money financed a getaway with his mistress and the launch of their new life. A crushing weight settled on my chest, and yet worse was still to come. Mr. Davis clicked onward. Images from the previous 2 years, moments that should have belonged to me and my child. Damon feeding a plump baby boy. Damon guiding the toddler's first steps in an opulent apartment. Damon, Eliza, and the child beaming over birthday candles. Their picture book family hurt to look at. Who is that child? My voice shook uncontrollably. He is the son of Damon Garrett and Eliza Sterling. Mr. Davis's tone matched the gravity. His name is Micah. He is over 2 years old. Damon Garrett has been deceiving you and living a double life. Micah, I repeated to myself. Even his secret son's name echoed our daughter Layla's. His cruelty had no floor. So that was the truth. The real face of the man I had lifted up at the cost of everything. Not merely unfaithful. He had another family. He was the father of another child. The money I had scraped together and handed over wasn't for a venture. It supported his second woman. I had been the diligent cash cow paying for someone else's happiness. This revelation cut deeper than any bruise. It mocked me and my love. I sat utterly still. Tears slid without stopping, but they were no longer weakness. They mourned my wasted youth, my complete deception. "Miss Hemphill," Mr. Davis said, offering a tissue, "I know it's hard to accept, but we have to face this. This evidence is a death blow. With the fact that he had a child and deliberately concealed it, we can prove beyond a doubt that he has gravely violated his marital and family duties. The court in the division of assets in the custody of Layla will side with you." I dried my face and raised my eyes, now hardened like steel. "He won't just lose custody, attorney," I answered, unwavering. "I want him to also pay for the crimes of fraud and embezzlement. I want him and that woman to be socially destroyed." Mr. Davis nodded. "That is precisely the next step in our plan." He slid over another dossier. "The company they have, Golden Future, is not just a money laundering front. They are also involved in several other business and legal activities. We are currently gathering more evidence for tax evasion and commercial fraud. The net is already closing, Miss Hemphill." I left as the city began to glow at dusk, hollowed out yet resolute. All affection for that man had vanished. What remained was a mother ready to fight for justice, for the future, and for her daughters. I couldn't afford defeat. As we tightened the legal noose around Damon and his mistress, they appeared either oblivious or convinced of their invulnerability. After days of silence and frozen accounts, Damon finally realized things weren't going his way. The role of the misunderstood, wronged husband no longer worked. He reached for a final gambit, one he believed would sway a loyal, sentimental woman like me, his mother, my mother-in-law. One morning in the garden with Layla, a staff member rushed over. "Ma'am, there's an older woman at the gate saying she's your mother-in-law and she's causing a scene." My heart gave a jolt. My mother-in-law. It had been ages. After our wedding, she'd visited only a few times, a simple country woman, ferociously protective and demanding when it came to her son. In her world, Damon was flawless, and every misstep excusable. I doubted she'd come to check on my well-being. "Let her in," I told the staff evenly. I sent Layla to her great-grandparents and went alone to the living room. I wanted to face her head-on. As soon as she saw me, she rushed over, not to strike or scold, but to drop to her knees and weep. "Oh, Sophia, my daughter, how can you be so cruel? Do you want to kill my Damon?" Her dramatic display blindsided me. The household staff watched, stunned. "Mother-in-law, please get up. Calmly tell me what's happening." I tried to lift her, but she clutched my legs and refused. "No, I won't get up until you promise to forgive my Damon. He's my only son. If anything happens to him, what will become of me?" She launched into a tearful appeal. She insisted he had been despondent since I left, not eating, not sleeping, only drinking, that his business had stopped, that he loved me, that all he did was to give me a better life, and that stress had pushed him into a moment of violence. "He was wrong to hit you. I won't justify it. But after doing it, his heart was also broken. He is regretful now. You are his wife. How can you push your own husband into the abyss? You block his accounts, you report him, and you want to put him in jail. If he goes to jail, who will take care of our Layla? Who will be responsible for her future?" She struck every vulnerable chord. Marriage, our child, the future. She painted him as a remorseful husband and father ruined by a brief lapse. Had I not seen the photos and recordings, I might have been taken in. Instead, I could only feel a cold, bitter mirth. I gently freed myself and stepped back. I regarded her performance without blinking. "Mother-in-law," I said, my tone unfamiliar and icy. "You don't have to keep acting. That drama doesn't work on me anymore." She sprang up, tears gone in an instant, fury and shock in her gaze. What are you saying?" "Go back and tell your son that if he is truly repentant, he should go to the courthouse and confess everything. If he plans to continue this charade, we will see each other in court. You insolent viper. It was a bad day when my Damon married someone like you. Do you think because you have money and connections, you can trample on our family? You'll see. You won't get away with this." She unleashed curses and insults. Once they would have wounded me. Now I watched as if it were a low-budget soap opera. "Please call an employee. Escort this lady out." 2 bodyguards arrived and led her away. She fought and screamed in vain. "You'll regret this, you rotten thing. I swear I won't stand idly by." Her voice carried even beyond the gate. The house quieted again, though a tempest churned inside me. Her failed act made one thing plain. They would not stop. Greed and selfishness saturated them to the core. They would use any foul tactic to get what they wanted. I also understood that after this sentimental ploy, something uglier would follow. I needed to be ready for anything. This wasn't only a courtroom fight, it was also a struggle over image and nerve. Her theatrics taught me I couldn't remain reactive. Answering every blow would keep me perpetually on the back foot. I had to change the narrative and appear before them and the world reborn. I was no longer Sophia, the submissive, timid wife. I had to become Sophia Monroe, the vice president of the Monroe Group, authoritative, confident, impossible to dismiss. This shift wasn't merely to punish Damon and his family, it was my reclamation. A return to the self I had lost in the shadows of a brutal marriage. I began with how I presented myself. I put away the plain, neutral loungewear. Grandpa summoned top stylists and designers in New York to the mansion. They arrived with the newest pieces from elite luxury houses. I tried everything. Flowing silk dresses, razor-sharp suits, glittering evening gowns. With each outfit, I felt myself reassembling. My long hair, usually tied back, was sculpted into full, elegant waves and colored a refined ash brown. The makeup team worked with precision, never heavy-handed. They erased fatigue, emphasized my features, and gave me an air of thoughtful authority. When I faced the mirror, I barely recognized the woman, a stranger and yet deeply me. She was who I should have been all along. A brilliant, steady confidence began to rise, but the true transformation was inward. I changed how I thought and acted. I immersed myself in the group's work. I stopped being a passive presence in meetings. I took charge of studying projects, parsing financials, and understanding each subsidiary's status. Knowledge from college resurfaced, now tempered by harsh life lessons, giving me a clearer, more grounded sense of business. I began offering analyses and proposals. At first, a few of the older executives who had long served Grandpa looked at me with doubt, seeing a pampered granddaughter. I didn't flinch. I won them over with numbers, coherent reasoning, and incisive arguments. Gradually, their expression shifted to respect. Grandpa watched my evolution, speaking little, pride bright in his eyes. He started assigning me weightier responsibilities and brought me into talks with key partners. "The business world is the fiercest battlefield," he told me. "It will make you stronger and tougher than any university." He was right. Each negotiation and challenge became a lesson. I learned poise under pressure, how to read motives, how to make decisions that were both firm and accurate. My assurance no longer derived from Grandpa's protection, but from my own competence and work. I stopped shrinking under scrutiny, and my voice didn't shake when I addressed a room. I had reclaimed myself. The change extended beyond the office. I rebuilt my social presence. I attended industry galas and charity functions. I appeared in public as someone new, an elegant, beautiful, intelligent, charismatic executive. The media shifted from calling me the victim of a tabloid-worthy divorce to the princess returning to the Monroe Empire, the rising figure in business. I knew every headline would reach Damon's ears. I needed him to witness it. I needed him to understand that the woman he had discarded and scorned now stood somewhere he would never reach. I wanted his regret, yet beneath that the change was for me. It declared that a small, pitiful man would not decide my fate. I was worthy of a richer life and a brighter horizon, and I would shape both with my own effort. The bird burned by betrayal would rise, a phoenix reborn, more radiant and unbreakable. Roughly a month after stepping into my role at the group, everything about my routine was different. Work filled my hours. Meetings, flights, negotiations. That pace dulled the ache and pushed my focus toward tomorrow. The media spoke more and more about the vice president of the Monroe Group, about me. I had no doubt Damon and his relatives watched every mention, yet they said nothing. No calls, no texts, no scenes. That quiet unsettled me. Were they scheming, or had fear finally silenced them? Either way, I couldn't relax. I asked Mr. Davis's team to keep collecting proof and readying the case. One Saturday, after a heavy week, I chose to spoil myself a little. I wanted to find presents for Layla. Her school performance was coming, and I wanted her to look like a little star. I took the white convertible sports car Grandpa had gifted me and drove to a high-end department store downtown. The old awkwardness was gone. I walked with ease. Elegance had become second nature. In a luxury children's shop, I was selecting a pink princess dress for Layla when a cutting, recognizable voice sounded behind me. Well, look who we have here. If it isn't the vice president. You look great driving luxury cars and coming to places like this. I turned. Eliza Sterling stood there, Damon's mistress, and Damon was with her, clinging close to her arm. He looked thinner and worn out, though he still wore a designer suit. When his gaze landed on me, surprise and discomfort flickered. Then he hid it behind a mask of chill detachment. Eliza, on the other hand, examined me from head to toe with undisguised envy and spite. Her stomach was clearly rounded, and she accentuated it in a showy way, as if to flaunt it. "What's wrong? Are you surprised? Did you think you could forbid us from coming to places like this? Of course, a woman like you, who has probably only set foot in flea markets in her life, it's normal for you to be astonished." I kept still, a small smile, nothing more. I wouldn't descend to her level. My quiet seemed to needle her further. "Damon, look at this. Now that she's a vice president, she ignores us." She pouted against his arm. "Or maybe she's still resentful because you left her." "Of course. How is an old woman who can't even give you a son going to keep a man? Are you done?" I didn't hold back this time. Meeting her eyes, I said, cool and even. I don't have time to take life lessons from a mistress like you, so would you mind stepping aside? What? How dare you? Who is the mistress? Her face flushed. I am Damon's fiancée and the mother of his son. You are the one who doesn't belong here. She lunged, but Damon blocked her. Enough, Eliza. Don't cause a scene here. His tone sounded worn. He looked at me, conflicted. Sophia, we don't have to go through this. It's water under the bridge. Yes, it's water under the bridge, I answered. So control your woman and tell her not to bark around and bother people. I took the dress and went to pay. I deliberately presented the black card Grandpa had placed in my wallet, the symbol of no limit. The saleswoman's demeanor shifted in an instant, almost a curtsy. Eliza and Damon turned ashen watching it. Childish? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. They needed to see the power dynamic reversed. I completed the purchase and walked out without another glance. I passed them like two strangers of no consequence. A few steps later, Damon called out, "Sophia, wait a moment." I paused, not turning. Footsteps approached. "I know I made a mistake," he said with a pleading note, "but please don't ruin my life. The company is on the verge of bankruptcy. If you said a word to your grandpa, couldn't you help me?" I pivoted slowly. I met his eyes, a wry smile forming. "Ruining your life, you say. Do you remember what you and your family tried to do to me? Steal my savings, take my daughter away? Compared to what you did, your company going bankrupt is nothing. But it was all I had, and my youth, my sacrifices. Who compensates me for that?" I cut him off. "Be satisfied that I'm leaving it like this. Don't tempt my patience, or the next place you'll go won't be the stock exchange, but the state prison." The words hit him like ice water. Color drained from his face. He staggered back, speechless. I refused to spare another breath. I turned and left while he stood like a statue in the flow of shoppers. The run-in rattled me, but it clarified one thing. He was afraid, deeply. He was going under, and I sensed the moment to bring my daughter home was nearing. That encounter confirmed that Damon's situation was dire. Cutting off all Monroe Group contracts had crippled Golden Future. Investors pulled out. Partners canceled. The vessel he and Eliza had built with my money was sinking fast, but a trapped predator is most dangerous. Instead of conceding defeat, he gambled everything. He arranged a grand event at a 5-star Midtown hotel. Officially, a client appreciation gala and investor showcase for a breakthrough tech project. In truth, one last effort to reel in fresh victims. That reached me via Mr. Davis's contacts. A bold thought flashed. Why watch from afar when his stage could become his reckoning? I went straight to Grandpa and Mr. Davis. "It's a golden opportunity," Mr. Davis said, eyes bright. "Investors, partners, and the press, all gathered in one place. If we expose his true face right there, the impact will be 1,000 times greater than in a cold courtroom trial. He will be socially annihilated without any possibility of excuse." Grandpa agreed, though he frowned. "Isn't that plan too risky? What if that cornered man tries to hurt you?" "Don't worry, Grandpa," I replied with certainty. "I won't go alone. We would orchestrate every detail. This would be the finale. We constructed the plan with care. First, through intermediaries, I posed as a Singapore venture capital fund drawn to his innovative project. My agents dangled a $35 million commitment. For Damon, as he was, that figure felt like salvation descended from the clouds. He swallowed the bait at once. Overjoyed, he sent the full deck and materials to the supposed fund. Unbeknownst to him, Monroe Group specialists were dissecting everything, adding to the evidence pile. Second, I told him the fund's representative would attend and sign during the event. That message made him reckless with excitement. He poured his dwindling resources into a lavish spectacle to impress. He even summoned ex-partners to re-earn their favor. Journalists from major outlets got invitations. He wanted a triumphant headline. He never imagined those witnesses would observe his collapse. When the evening arrived, the hotel radiated brilliance. The ballroom buzzed. Damon and Eliza greeted guests, all smiles and poise. They bore themselves like a glamorous power couple. Eliza wore a fitted gown showcasing her advanced pregnancy. She drifted among the crowd, laughing, chatting, playing hostess. At the height of the festivities, the main doors opened. I entered. The room hushed as if someone cut the sound. Eyes turned. I wore an understated, exquisitely tailored black gown. The sleek silhouette, my hair swept into an elegant updo, my neck bare, diamonds catching the light. A bold lip, a steady gaze. At my side, Grandpa. And behind us, Mr. Davis with 2 guards. Seeing the president of the Monroe Group deepened the buzz. Damon and Eliza froze mid-smile. Damon blanched. He hurried over, stumbling. "Pete President, Sophia, what are you doing here?" I smiled, the sort that chills. "Can't we be here? I heard Golden Future has an important event today and a big investor from Singapore is coming. As a businesswoman, I couldn't miss such a good learning opportunity. But we haven't sent you an invitation." "Oh, really?" I raised a golden card. "And what is this? I suppose one of your employees made a mistake." He understood I was baiting him. But in front of that audience, especially Grandpa, he had no move. He forced a grin and escorted us to the VIP table. The party continued, yet the energy shifted. Attention swung from the host to our group. Whispers spread. Reconciliation? A warning? A spectacle? The snare was in place. I sipped my wine and watched his face, a map of dread. The show, the last most decisive scene, was moments away. When tension peaked, Damon climbed the stage. He steadied himself, lifted the microphone, and launched into his pitch. He spoke about Golden Future's vision, the dazzling tech that would change the world. He promised a brilliant tomorrow designed to seduce investors. From the front row, Eliza gazed at him with worshipful pride. So lost were they in their fantasy that they missed the tug of the final curtain. "And today," he announced, voice swelling, "we have the great honor of welcoming an important investor from Singapore. This collaboration will be the wing that allows Golden Future to fly higher and farther." Mid-sentence, the giant LED behind him went black. A rustle swept the audience. Damon turned, confused. He gestured to the tech crew. No response. Then the screen flickered back on. Not with his logo. A clear image filled it. My face bruised, swollen eyes, my leg in a cast. The photograph from the morning after that night. Beside it, in large, unmistakable text, "This is the true face of love." The ballroom held its breath. Music died. Stillness took over. Damon stared at the screen, white as paper. He jabbed a shaking finger at it. "What is this? Turn it off. Turn it off right now." Too late. The display cut to a video. Security footage of him yanking my hair and kicking me in that small apartment. Though grainy, the violence was obvious. Shock became outrage. Gasps, cries, disgust. My God, what a beast, and he seemed so normal. Eliza froze in her seat. Her eyes darted between the stage and the evidence. Panic taking hold. The reel continued. Images of Damon with Eliza, their hidden child, the happy family tableau, then bank records tracing my $500,000 into his company. For the finishing blow, an audio file thundered through the hall. It was their conversation, plotting the con, describing me as the money source. "That woman is naive and trusts anyone. She's easy to fool. As soon as you ask for money, she gives it without question." Damon's smug, contemptuous voice filled the room. When it ended, fury erupted. The hush exploded into condemnation. "Scammer! Rotten thing! Thief!" Investors and partners who minutes earlier had listened attentively now stared as if at a monster. Some walked out. Others lifted phones to capture the downfall. Damon stood rigid under the lights, trembling. Everything caved in at once. He looked down at me, eyes blazing with hate and despair. He realized this was my design. I rose and stepped onto the stage. A staffer, stunned, passed me the microphone. I faced him and spoke, cool and audible to every corner. "Damon Garrett, your performance was magnificent, but it's time to bring down the curtain." I turned to the crowd, my voice stronger. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am Sophia Hemphill, the wife of the man on this stage. What you have just seen is only a small part of the truth. Today, I am not here to lament my pain, but to unmask a professional scammer and an abuser who hides behind the mask of a successful entrepreneur." I lifted a sheaf of documents. In my hands, I have all the evidence of Golden Future's scams, embezzlement, commercial fraud, and tax evasion. That innovative project he just spoke about is nothing more than a fairy tale to steal your money. "Shut up," he screamed like a wounded animal. He tried to rush me, but my guards held him. He thrashed and spat insults. Eliza, seeing the end, slipped for the exit, abandoning him to face the music. The celebration had turned into the most public, humiliating judgment he could have imagined. As chaos swelled, a line of uniformed officers appeared at the entrance. Silence fell again. A senior officer moved to the stage with two others, the crowd splitting to let them pass. He stopped before Damon and presented an official document. "Damon Garrett, you are under arrest for the alleged crimes of fraud, embezzlement, serious assault, and commercial fraud. You must accompany us to the precinct to give a statement." It was the final hammer blow. His fight drained away. He sagged, eyes vacant. He understood it was over. Two officers cuffed him. The click of metal echoed like a tolling bell. "No, it wasn't me. She set a trap for me," he mumbled, but the word thug followed him, and no one cared. They led him out through a corridor of disdain, head bowed like a beaten cur. The doors shut, and with them, a life shattered. At the same time, another team arrived at Eliza's luxury home. She had fled the party only to meet the law head-on. Shaken and heavily pregnant, the bravado vanished. Under questioning, she crumbled and confessed. She admitted the scheme with Damon. Golden Future was nothing but a laundering vehicle. Seeking leniency, she surrendered ledgers, documents, and evidence she had kept to protect herself. She turned on him without hesitation. The spectacle continued. Back at the hotel, after Damon's arrest, his mother, Clarissa Garrett, attending as the would-be mother-in-law of a president, couldn't endure the shock. Seeing her son in cuffs and her wealth fantasy vanish, she screamed and fainted. People hurried to aid her and called an ambulance. They took her away unconscious. The drama she and her son had staged ended as tragedy for their own household. Justice moves slowly, but it comes. The perpetrator, the accomplice, the enabler, every one of them met the consequences. I observed from the stage. Quiet. No giddy triumph, just a deep calm. At last, justice. Grandpa came up and rested a hand on my shoulder. "It's all over, my granddaughter." I nodded. A single tear slid down. Not from misery, but release. I had crossed the tempest. Blue sky awaited. In the days that followed, the case dominated headlines. With evidence that couldn't be disputed and Eliza's confession, every crime surfaced. Reporters dug into his history. How did a driven young man from modest roots become a predator, scamming wealthy, unsuspecting women, a counterfeit millionaire? Society recoiled at his true nature. I, once labeled a cruel wife, became a symbol of strength and a seeker of justice. Criticism transformed into respect and empathy. Letters and messages poured in from women I didn't know, telling me my story pushed them to leave toxic relationships. I understood my battle had outgrown me. 6 months later, the public trial of Damon Garrett and his co-conspirators opened in federal court. The media and the crowd swarmed from early morning. I attended as the victim and principal witness. Fear and anxiety were gone. I was there to face what had been and to witness the law at work. I wore a white suit, understated makeup, calm and self-assured. When I entered, the room turned to look. I walked to the prosecution table and sat beside Mr. Davis. In the dock sat Damon, Eliza, and Clarissa. The sight of them was pitiful. Damon looked gaunt, hair graying, eyes hollow. He kept his head down. Eliza, heavily pregnant, wept continuously. My former mother-in-law, wheelchair-bound after a stroke, had a twisted mouth and struggled to speak. Only her stare, fixed on me, burned with hatred. Proceedings began. The prosecution read through their offenses: domestic violence, fraud, embezzlement, defamation, conspiracy. Evidence followed each charge: videos, audio, bank trails, witness accounts. When I took the stand, I recounted everything without wavering. The sacrifices, the blows, the betrayals, the plot they wove. I didn't weep. My tone was steady because I was no longer a supplicant but a survivor, insisting on the truth. When I finished, the room went still. I saw empathy and anger in the faces of judge, jurors, and spectators. When Damon spoke, he kept his head bowed and admitted it all in a low voice. There was nothing left to deny. He begged for a chance to begin again and asked for leniency so he could meet obligations to the son about to be born. Eliza, through tears, shifted blame to Damon, claiming she had only been led astray. She asked for a reduced sentence due to her pregnancy, but the web had closed. There was no escape. After several days, the ruling arrived. The stern, elderly judge read the decision. This court, after examining all the evidence and testimonies, hands down the following sentence. The accused Damon Garrett is convicted of the crimes of serious assault, aggravated fraud, and defamation to a sentence of 20 years in state prison. 20 years. Almost half a lifetime. That was the debt Damon had to settle. When the punishment was read, he collapsed into himself, hands over his face, shaking. The accused, Eliza Sterling, is convicted as an accomplice to fraud, with the mitigating factor of confession and her state of gestation, to a sentence of 7 years in federal prison. 7 years. Her child would arrive and grow up behind bars. Such was the fate of someone who had mercilessly crushed another woman's joy. The accused, Clarissa Garrett, is convicted of the crimes of defamation and cover-up, taking into account her health condition, to a suspended sentence of 3 years. The judge's mallet fell with force, closing the proceedings. Justice had prevailed. A long breath escaped me. I found Grandpa in the gallery. He gave a small nod, quiet delight shining in his eyes. As I stepped outside, a wall of flashes met me again, but this time, they weren't prying queries. They were congratulations. I declined every interview. Wordlessly, I got into the car and left the place that had just weighed my past. The war had ended, and I had won. Although the verdict was final, its ripples remained. Damon's relatives saw their world collapse. For me and Layla, it marked the first steps toward mending and rebuilding. A court victory didn't erase the scars, particularly for my daughter. She had seen the violence, endured a sudden separation, and had grown withdrawn and timid. Nights often ended with her waking and calling my name in terror. Watching that pierced me. I knew legal success was only a starting point. Now the priority was restoring my child's laugh and innocence. I chose to set my responsibilities at the group aside for a while. All my hours would be given to Layla. I brought her to a top child therapist in New York. Following the doctor's advice, I practiced listening, soothing fear with steadiness and love. Our shared recovery began. We traveled, turquoise shores, white sands, tall peaks. We built castles, flew kites, and lingered for sunsets. I wanted her to learn that beyond the darkness she had seen, the world held astonishing beauty. We joined art programs. We painted, touched piano keys, shaped clay. I wanted her emotions to flow through colors and music. Little by little, Layla changed. More laughter, more words, fewer terrors at night. She returned to being that sweet, bright girl, and as she healed, so did I. By staying close, caring without condition, I filled the hollow in me. Thoughts of the past loosened. My anger toward Damon faded. I realized clinging to rage would only keep hurting me. Forgiveness wasn't for his sake, but to grant myself calm. Alongside caring for her, I turned to my own well-being. I enrolled in yoga and meditation. Breathing and gentle movement steadied body and mind. I also dove into books on philosophy, psychology, and the craft of living. The world seemed vast and interesting again. I stopped retreating and welcomed companionship. I met old friends for coffee and conversation. In business circles, I found new friends. Women tough and self-reliant. They showed me other paths to fulfillment. Joy didn't have to come from a man. It could rise from one's work, passions, and self-determination. One day, Grandpa invited me into his study. He handed me a portfolio. Sophia, these are the files for several charity projects sponsored by the group. Take a look and choose the one that resonates most with your heart to manage yourself. I think the time has come for you to do something for society. I leafed through proposals. Schools for rural children, housing for low-income families. My eyes halted on the Serenity Home, a refuge for women and children affected by domestic abuse. My heart leapt. This was my calling. Using my story and experience, I wanted to stand with women walking a similar road. I wanted to tell them they were not alone, that after any storm, the sun returns. Healing meant more than soothing pain. It meant turning pain into power and purpose. I had found my way. 3 years, not an eternity, yet enough for even the deepest hurts to ease, enough for the inner storm to settle into still water. People say time cures all, but I learned time itself does nothing. It's a vessel. We choose to fill it with recovery or let it spoil. Our will decides. I chose hope. Our lives, Layla's and mine, open to a blank chapter, each line written in the ink of calm and laughter. My little one, who once saw the worst, had become a confident, luminous second grader. The fear had left her eyes, replaced by curiosity and joy. She no longer startled awake or cried at sudden sounds. Instead, morning after morning, she hugged me tight, shared tiny secrets of childhood, and when she stumbled, she stood up with a grin and said, "I'm okay, Mommy." Seeing her in uniform, hair neatly combed, chattering about school, I knew my choice to fight to the end had been right. I had secured justice for myself and reclaimed the whole of my daughter's innocent childhood. The project closest to my heart, the Serenity Home, blossomed too. What began as one small center became a sturdy network, a shared home for hundreds of women and children in need. I wasn't merely a distant patron. I was a sister, a friend, a companion. 2 afternoons each week, I sat with them, not to oversee, but to listen. I heard a single mother's account. After a decade of abuse, she escaped with 2 kids. Through tears, she told me that seeing my story on television gave her the strength to go. She thought, if she could do it, why can't I? I am also a person, and I deserve to be happy. I heard a 17-year-old describe leaving school to marry a wealthy but violent man, arriving one stormy night with nothing but sorrow. Now she was back in class, inching toward her dream of fashion design. Each testimony mirrored pieces of my own history. I saw myself in their fear, their pain, and their fragile hope. Helping them helped me. I learned again that the way through suffering isn't to bury it, but to raise it like a torch for those still wandering in the dark. In quiet moments, my thoughts drifted to Damon's family. Even without looking, news reached me. They said Eliza, after release, slipped away with her son, took a new name in a far-off town, and started over. The boy likely kept her going. My former mother-in-law, worn down by loss and illness, died alone in a care home. And Damon, 20 years is a long stretch. He's serving his time behind steel and stone. I feel neither hatred nor satisfaction now. The fire has cooled to near indifference. Their ending was of their own making. The past is like a flood that recedes and leaves silt behind, the residue of forgetting. I learned to let it go, not to absolve them, but to unchain my spirit. Under Grandpa's steady mentorship, my role in the group ceased to be a burden and became a passion. I proved, to the world and to myself, that I could stand on my own. I was no longer merely the president's granddaughter. I was Sophia Monroe, the CEO of the Monroe Group, who steered through a global economic crisis, sealed a multi-million-dollar deal with partners in Japan, and grew the brand throughout Asia. Professional triumph brought independence, but the sweetest moments were simple ones with family. One weekend, beneath a clear sky and a clean ocean breeze, Layla, Grandpa, and I drove to the California shore. Instead of an opulent resort, we rented a small cottage near a garden of bougainvillea. The sun sank slowly, gilding sea and sky. Layla teamed up with local kids to build a sprawling sandcastle. Her bell-like laughter mingled with the surf, a harmony of peace. Grandpa and I shared a wooden bench and watched quietly. He had grown older, silver white hair, yet clear eyes and the same gentle smile. He no longer carried a conglomerate on his shoulders. He found happiness in gardening, books, and time with his only great-granddaughter. "Look at her," Grandpa said. Pride brightened his gaze. "She's just like her great-grandmother, always cheerful and full of energy." I rested my head on his shoulder. Slender, yet still my firmest support. "Thank you, Grandpa, for always being there, for giving everything to my daughter and me." "Silly girl," he said, smoothing my hair. You've earned your own happiness. You are the strongest and resilient person I know." We sat together, 3 generations bound by love and sacrifice, stronger than blood. Then a familiar baritone sounded behind us. "Good afternoon, Mr. Alexander." "Sophia, I hope I'm not interrupting." I turned, and my pulse jumped before I could stop it. Marcus stood there, the gifted architect I'd met through Serenity Home. He'd joined not as a contractor but as a volunteer, using his free time to repair and design spaces for women in need. A kind, steady man with a generous heart. He knew my history and never looked at me with pity or prying curiosity, only with respect. "Marcus," I smiled, easy and natural. "And just taking a stroll. Care to join us?" Grandpa caught our glance and grinned. He rose, leaning on his cane. "I'm going to see how our Layla's castle is coming along. You two talk quietly." He headed toward the beach, leaving us a little space. Marcus sat near me. We watched the sun slip under the horizon, companionably quiet, a hush full of peace and mutual understanding. "You look different today, Sophia," he said at last. "You're not the strong vice president from the meeting room, nor the dedicated Sophia from the Serenity Home." "And how do I look?" I asked, a touch intrigued. "You look very serene, peaceful," he said with sincere eyes, like the sea after a storm. A smile came and stayed without my noticing. No one had said that to me before. With him, I didn't have to act invulnerable. I could simply be, a woman with wounds and soft places. Our eyes met, and I felt the first gentle knock of a new, honest love at my heart's door. I wasn't afraid of love anymore. I understood that love itself doesn't scar us. Choosing the wrong person does. And I am worthy of love. I am worthy of happiness. I looked out to where the sun had vanished, the last light still warming the sky, bright with promise. I knew tomorrow would bring an even more radiant dawn. I cannot predict what awaits. Perhaps a love that fulfills, perhaps fresh trials. But for the first time in years, fear was gone. I felt ready to greet whatever comes. The storm lay behind me, ahead stretched only blue. Dear viewers, after accompanying our protagonist Sophia on her stormy journey, it's likely that very complex emotions remain in our hearts. We've been enraged by Damon's cruelty. We've suffered watching Sophia sink into despair, and we've rejoiced together when she finally rose from the ashes. This story, although fictional, leaves us with very profound and real lessons for our lives. Lessons that can be beacons and sources of strength on life's uncertain journey. The first and perhaps most profound lesson we can draw is never to remain silent or endure in the darkness. Tolerance never brings peace. It only feeds the evil to grow. Sophia made the mistake of enduring the violence for a long time. She hoped her silence would bring peace to her family, to her daughter. But reality proved the opposite. Violence, once it begins, never stops on its own. It only intensifies and becomes crueler. Layla's trembling voice, "Grandpa, Mommy is going to die," was the most costly wake-up call. It teaches us that sometimes salvation doesn't come from patience, but from a small act of courage. Never underestimate the power of asking for help. We must teach our children and ourselves that when we face injustice and violence, asking for help is not weakness but the most powerful instinct for survival. The second lesson is about the power of change and self-worth. Sophia's life only truly changed when she decided to change. That change didn't just come from designer clothes or the VP title. It started from the deepest part of her being, from the realization that she deserved to be respected, that she deserved to be happy. When you know your own worth, the whole world looks at you with different eyes. This story shows us that money and power are useful tools, but they are useless if they are not controlled by a wise mind and a firm heart. Sophia didn't use the money for blind revenge. She used it to acquire knowledge, seek legal support, and transform herself from a victim into the protagonist of her own struggle. That is true wealth, and perhaps the most humane and profound lesson is how we face victory and heal the wounds. Sophia could have reveled in the downfall of Damon's family and lived the rest of her life in opulence and comfort. but she didn't. She transformed her pain into compassion and her wealth into a tool to help others in similar situations. The Serenity Home is not just a charity project, it is a symbol of rebirth, proof that after the storm, the human being can be stronger and more compassionate. True victory is not when the enemy falls, but when, after everything, you can stand tall, look at the past with serenity, and move toward the future with an open heart. It is a journey to transform pain into strength and personal misfortune into value for the community. I believe everyone, men and women, can find a part of themselves in this story. Perhaps you are going through some pain right now. Perhaps you feel powerless against life's injustice. Remember that you are never alone. Dare to raise your voice, to ask for help, and most importantly, to believe in your own worth, because the brightest dawn always comes after the darkest night. What do you think of this story? Which lesson resonated most with your heart? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your contribution can be a great encouragement and valuable